Good morning. I'm Frank Giardiello from Johns Hopkins Hospital, and the subject we're going to discuss today is how to present a poster. And this idea came about several years ago when Helen Chills, who is a part of the education committee, and I were discussing the meeting, and we realized that the poster session was, in fact, for us, the most fun part of the meeting. But in going around and looking at the poster session, it looked like people weren't having fun. So we decided to put together some tips that might help people in presenting their poster. I think my perspective is that you should be a salesperson for your data. And it reminds me of an experience I had when I was in high school. I was a salesman in the sporting goods department of Sears. And there were two ways that you could get through the Saturday that I had to spend working at Sears. One, you could stand behind the register and wait for people to come up and help them, or you could go out into the sales department and you could talk to people and help them. And the second method was always the best method. It was the most fun method. So what I'm suggesting is that you be a salesperson for your data. Just like the people in the exhibition hall, you should think about how to present the data. You should, for example, you should dress up correctly. You should prepare yourself that day by eating breakfast and lunch, because you need to have glucose that goes to your brain cells so that you can deal with the people that come up to the poster. And some other tips include the fact that you should, as you're presenting your poster, you should have a notebook or a dictaphone so that when people give you feedback, you can sign it, you can put the feedback down on a piece of paper so you can remember the feedback on your poster. Another thing is that I like is that instead of pointing to the poster, you can have a laser pointer. I use a laser pointer so that I can stand back a bit and use the laser pointer to point to the different places on the poster. Also, I think it's important to have a business card, because people often want to get a hold of you afterwards, and if you can take out a business card and give it to them, it's much simpler than trying to write something down, etc. Now, just like a salesperson, you have to have a sales pitch. And so it's important to come up with a 30-second to a minute, I think about a minute presentation of what your data is. I wouldn't make it any more than a minute, because people are walking around in this auditorium looking at thousands of posters. They don't want more than about a minute. So what I do, let me give you an example of a sales pitch. This is just a prop. Let's say we're talking about juvenile polyposis. My poster is on juvenile polyposis. I might say something like, juvenile polyposis is a rare polyposis syndrome, and it has an association to colorectal cancer, but we're unclear what that association is. So what we did is that we did a person-year analysis looking at the risk of colon cancer in juvenile polyposis. And what we found was that there was a 35% elevated risk, times risk, of colorectal cancer in juvenile polyposis. And this risk was the same in men and women. And that the mean age of diagnosis of colon cancer was 44, and the absolute risk over a lifetime was 40%. So subsequently, what we think is that there's a high risk of colon cancer in juvenile polyposis, and that one should screen the patient frequently to prevent this risk of cancer. So that's a short presentation. It's about a minute. And then if the person that's coming through has questions, then they can ask you questions. And then you have to be prepared to answer the details of what a person-year analysis is, etc. But you shouldn't give a long spiel, because they're not going to want a long spiel of what you did. If they have other questions, then they'll take it from there. Now, you may think that presenting your poster is a one-way street, meaning that you're giving that person a lot of information. but you should not look at it that way. What you should think about is that this is a two-way street, that you're going to give that person information, and then you're going to pick their brains about what they think about your poster. Now, why is that important? That's important because the person that comes to see you has an interest and probably an expertise in your subject. And for example, they may be, if you write a paper, a manuscript, and send it off, they may be the reviewer of the paper, for all you know. So whatever comments they have, you want to collect them and put them down so that if you write a paper, you can respond, you can take care of those comments in the paper without having the paper rejected for those problems. The other thing that you should be aware of is that you can often make collaborations with these people that come by. For example, I have 50 juvenile polyposis patients, and they in their lab do this assay. And they might say, well, why don't you send me the blood on your patients? We'll do the assay in my lab, and then we'll write a paper. So you always have to think about whether there's a collaboration to be made as people come by. So in summary, I have summed this up in the 4 P's. Number 1, how to present a poster. First is perspective. You should be a salesperson for your data. That's the perspective. And you should dress up like a salesperson. You should, as they walk by your poster and they stop and look at it, I give them 5 seconds and I go, can I help you? And then most people want to be helped. And you can take them quickly through your poster, as I mentioned. So the second perspective is preparation. You have to prepare. You have to dress up. You have to have your business card. You might want to have a laser pointer. The third is a presentation, that short presentation that just concretely tells them what you did. And the fourth thing is the positives of this experience. The first positive is it's fun. Because otherwise you see people sitting by that chair next to the poster getting nothing out of the situation. So it's fun if you interact with the people that come by. Second, you may get a collaboration out of it. And third, you can often get a lot of feedback to help you in developing your abstract into a manuscript. So those are my thoughts on the poster presentation. I've written an article on how to do, my article is called Powerful PowerPoint Presentations. If you look at that article under my name, Giardiello, you might find it. But what I say is that on a slide, you should have no more than 8 lines on a slide. And the reason for that is, it's hard in this is very busy stuff. And it's hard to get out what you're saying out of this busy stuff. So I think that the poster is important to be done like you would do a slide. Very telegraphic, not a lot of sentences, so that people can get the high points of what's going on. I think, and another thing I say in how to do a powerful PowerPoint presentations is less is more. You don't have to give all the details. You can do that when the person comes up and explain what's going on. Because the details, people get wrapped up in the details and they don't know what the heck you did. You want to give them the conclusions. What you need to have right down here in this corner, this is not good. Right down here in the corner, you need conclusions. People want to get to the bottom line fast. So I do think the visual thing is better. Now this is a poster going this way. The poster should be going that way. But I do think having that the font size is important. But remember, your personal presentation can overcome a lot of that. You can overcome a lot of that. All you have to do is, this is what we found, and you point to the number. It may be so dense, but you point to the number. So your presentation can overcome that. In the old days, when we made slides, and they were fixed in stone, they were paper slides, you couldn't change them. You could come to a meeting like this, you wanted to change them, you couldn't change them. You had to rely on what you said and how you presented that slide to change it. Now you can go, and make a few changes in just 5 seconds. But you couldn't do that in the old days. So I learned that what you said was much more important than what you showed. But what you showed is also important. It has to be very succinct. The more complicated more complicated you make something, you lose the audience. And when you lose the audience, that's the end of it. So don't lose the audience. I think one of the things they have now, you can make them from home and pick them up here, is a very good service. And then you can ship them home, so you don't have to deal with them on the plane. I think that's a good service. All right. Well, thank you all.